blacks, our true identity according to the Bible, which is the 12 tribes of Israel. And according to these scriptures, it's the only nation on the face of this earth that the Lord gives a damn about. And of course, that our oppressor is nothing more than the devil that the Bible speaks of. Slack. Today we're going to be going into Bel and the Dragon in the Apocrypha. And we're going to be going over how foolish it is for our people to follow after idols and to follow after the idols of these other nations. You know what I'm saying? Because that foolish, just mindset and way of life, that's what the heathens do. That's not of the children of Israel. And that's not what the Lord has intended for us to do. This is Bel and the Dragon, chapter 1, verse 1. And King Astyages was gathered to his fathers, and Cyrus of Persia received his kingdom. So King Astyages had passed away. So if you don't know, that's Israelite culture for someone to say he's gathered with his fathers, or he's sleeping with his fathers, because we don't believe that once someone dies that they're just gone. You understand? In our culture, we believe in reincarnation. And then once this king died, this disgusting heathen passed away, his son ended up taking the throne and ended up ruling in his stead. Verse 2. And Daniel Verse 2, and Daniel conversed with the king and was honored above all his friends. And much like any Israelite that gets close to a ruler, not only in these scriptures, but even in all the empires it is that we've served in captivity under, you understand, it's always a brother that can get close to the ruler, which, really 10 times out of 10 is due to what it is that brother can do for the kingdom that is oppressing our people. You understand? Verse 3. Now the Babylonians had an idol called Bel, and there were spent upon him every day 12 great measures of fine flour, and 40 sheep, and 6 vessels of wine. So there was, there's 12 great measures of fine flour, 40 sheep, and 6 vessels of wine that were essentially sacrificed to this God every single day. Which, that's a hell of a lot of supplies to be given to a statue. Something that can't really even do anything for you. And that's the foolishness of these heathens. They'll sit there and sacrifice all of these supplies on their gods, even when they've fallen on hard times. Just like what Elam or the East Indians were doing when COVID hit. Elam was sitting there giving all these supplies to their idols, their false gods, praying to them to stop the plague of COVID-19 from ravishing their nation as it has been, all for nothing. Same thing for the Arabs. All that praying, all that blood it is that they've sacrificed to their rock, it's all for nothing. For our people to follow in their ways and to just pray to the stone or the wood or the cross, to pray to an ankh, it's all foolishness. And we like to think because we're living in the 21st century that, we're so elevated in thought, when that is such a childish thing to do, to worship an idol. And to follow a God that cannot save you, that cannot help you or do anything for you besides just sit there. Verse 4. And the king worshipped it and went daily to adore it. But Daniel worshipped his own God. And the king said unto him, why dost not thou worship Bel? And that's exactly how things were, before our people were conquered by these different heathen nations. We knew to worship our own God. We knew the power is that our God, or the Most High power, held, and how it is that He could easily destroy these other gods. That's, of course, when we chose not to be defiant to Him. And that's exactly what it was, the tribe of Gad, Issachar, Manasseh, all the so-called 10 lost tribes of the children of Israel were doing before the Spaniards came over here and started influencing the native tribes to follow after their ways. And force their way of life upon them. It's the same thing we were doing before the Arabs came and conquered our people and forced us to pray to a rock by the sword. We worshipped our own God. And then the kings would come to us, or the rulers of those kingdoms and lands would come to us and ask us why it is that we would not worship their gods, why it is that we wouldn't sacrifice to their gods, why we wouldn't do away with not only our power, but our customs. Why we wouldn't do away with our culture. And because we've been destroyed for so long, and because we've been following men as well as women who have benefited off of persuading us to throw away our culture, we don't even have just a notion of integrity it is that Daniel, as well as brothers and sisters in the past have had. Because you got to have hell of an integrity in order to stand up against a ruler of another land or the military of another land and tell them that you're going to keep what it is that you got. You're going to keep your customs, you're going to keep your culture, you're going to continue to follow the Most High power that your fathers have followed in the past. That's why the UPK is something that's just so amazing in this earth. Because it's full of brothers and sisters who have decided that they're going to no longer sacrifice and worship idols, who have decided that the God of our fathers is far more powerful and far more important than to follow whatever God is out there that allows for us to, chase after whatever lust is in our hearts. Verse 5, who answered and said, because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who has created the heaven and the earth. It's as simple as that. Us as a nation, at one point we used to believe in not worshiping rocks. We didn't. You sit there and fight one another in order to worship this rock, of course, until we became conquered. But when we was following our own God, we knew better than to do so. We knew better than to follow an image of another nation. We knew better than to follow, just whatever nonsense it is that they were worshiping, until eventually we were influenced by, the leaders within our communities and really within our nation. Who hath created the heaven and the earth, and hath sovereignty over all flesh. So it's really as simple as that. Our people like to argue on behalf of Allah or on behalf of whatever it is we claim that the God of Christianity is, claiming how it is that they created this and that and the third. When in reality, when you look into this book right here, the God of Israel is the one that created the heavens and the earth. He's the one that has allowed it for man to be created in the image that we're in today. You understand? He's the one that flooded the earth so long ago. He's the one that brought us out of the captivity in Egypt So there's only one power on this earth that is, truly real. That truly has the ability to put things into motion on this earth, and that's only the God of Israel. That's not no other false god out here. It's certainly not no stone has been drooled on by every single Arab in existence. It's certainly not the cross that pedophiles and rapists and murderers pray to every single day, and thank it for allowing them to continue in their wickedness. Verse 6. Then said the king unto him, thinkest thou not that Bel is a living God? Seest thou not how much he eateth and drinketh every day? And that's exactly what Christians will sit there and say when they're fighting on behalf of Christianity, when they're fighting on behalf of that wood cross. They'll sit there and bring out the works and the miraculous things it is that these different gods have done for either their nation or the earth. It don't matter what it is that they're bringing up, but at the end of the day, all these things that they claim are the works of their gods, it's simply not. The Most High Power, the God of Israel, is the only one that can influence anything. Like the scriptures say, the Lord, he makes alive and he kills. He heals and he wounds. He's the only power on this earth that is able to do any of that. 8. So the king was wroth and called for his priests and said unto them, and because I skipped a verse. Verse 7. Then Daniel smiled and said, O king, be not deceived. And that's some words it is that our people, the children of Israel, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, saying we should hearken on to them words. Because us as a nation, we're so easily deceived by what it is that our pastor is telling us, of what it is that our so-called leaders are telling us are the works of, this God or that God. And like Christianity will sit there and tell you, that the reason people are coming together on the earth and this and that is because of, the works of their God, because God loves everybody and wants everyone to come together and join hand in hand. But at the same time, their God, is also, allowing for child molestation to run rampant within their churches, to allow for, brothers and sisters to hate one another, for brothers to sell drugs to their community, to their brothers and sisters, and to murder, brothers they have disagreements with. For this is but clay within and brass without. So within this idol, Bel, specifically, it's clay within. So the inside of it, it's simply just clay. Most of the time, when it is that they're making like a metal statue, they'll use clay and they'll just cover it in whatever metal they're, it's like just an outside coating of metal. That's why it says brass without. So on the outside of it, it's simply brass, and the inside is just clay. There's no, supreme spirit or being within that statue that is, allowing for things that happen in the earth or that are blessing your nation, and did never eat or drink anything. And all these idols it is that we worship as a people, you know what I'm saying, they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't give blessings, they don't deliver curses, you know what I'm saying, they don't cause war, make peace, they don't heal, they don't do any of this. They're just simply statues. You know what I'm saying? They're just wood. They're just stone. You know what I'm saying? It's all just in our imagination about these things being able to help us as a people. You know what I'm saying? That's all just the way of the heathens. You know what I'm saying? That's why so many of them have erected statues and monuments to their many gods and worship them and actually believe that they're helping out their nation. You understand? Just like the East Indians, they believed that their gods were going to help them during COVID-19 until COVID-19 started killing so many of them off that they had to do mass incinerations for the bodies until COVID-19 took all the faith out of their gods it is that they had to the point to where they were throwing all of their idols and their statues into the river and allowing for them to just float out into the sea. We're saying that's the power of the Most High God. Because the Most High God isn't just, you understand, clay and brass. He's not just wood, you understand. 8. So the king was wroth and called for his priests. You understand? And because of what Daniel had said to the king, of course, anybody hearing about how it is that their God is false and how it is that they worship an idol, that they have no true power in this earth, you understand? Of course, they naturally get angry and end up having to lash out against somebody. And so nowadays, people just try to lash out against the real priests and prophets in this earth, which is the Isupk. But because this specific instance, you understand, the king of Persia, you understand, worshiped this god, and it had priests. You understand, of course, he got angry with them and said unto them, if ye tell me not who this is that devoureth these expenses, ye shall die. You understand? The king wanted to know, who is it that is eating up all of these supplies that I'm putting inside of this temple? He said, who's eating all these sheep and drinking this wine and eating this flour? Which that's something that our people have to start asking these religious leaders or leaders in general, like where is all this money that we're putting into these different programs? You understand? And different that's about it. Different programs. You understand? Because our people put a lot of money into not only religious organizations, but we also put a lot of money into these so-called leaders who pop up within our communities, and so who pop up within our cities or our state, claiming to fight to make our lives better as a nation, when in reality they're simply just stuffing their pockets. You know what I'm saying? They're simply making sure that their families can eat while your family starve and wither away. Like that's not what a true leader is like. And this has been going on for so long with our people that we should have already lost all faith in the Christian church, you understand, in the Nation of Islam, and Egyptology. You understand? We should have done lost faith in all of this because of how much money, you understand, how much expense, you understand, we put up into these different organizations or entities, especially with the Christian church. You understand? There is a Christian church on every single, you understand, block. Like, and there's always at least 2 or 3 damn near mega churches in every single ghetto. Like we gotta start questioning these so-called leaders about what it is that they're truly doing for our people. 9. But if he can certify me that Bel devoured them, then Daniel shall die. For he hath spoken blasphemy against Bel. And Daniel said unto the king, let it be according to thy word. He said, and that same faith it is that Daniel has in our power, in the king, it's like in the God of Israel. It's like to be able to prove that what it is that the king of Persia worshiped was nothing but an idol, a false god, and that our God is the one true power in this earth. You know, saying that's the same exact spirit that the Isupk has. You know, saying you got to have, just utter faith in a power, especially when you come up against so-called gods that promise you a life, like a eternal life of happiness up in heaven, dressed in all white, not having a care in the world. Everybody is up there celebrating, popping bottles, having a good time. Like you gotta have just utter faith. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be steadfast in what it is that you believe in, just as Daniel did, just as the priests and prophets of old did. Verse 10. Now the priests of Bel were 70. So there were 70 priests. The score is 20. 3 scores 60. 10 to 70. Beside their wives and children. And that's as well as, that's not counting their wives as well as their children. So it's basically just giving you an idea of essentially how many families there were that was involved in this whole charade. And the king went with Daniel into the temple of Bel. 11. So Bel's priests said, lo, we go out, but thou, O king, set on the meat and make ready the wine, and shut the door fast, and seal it with thine own signet. And saying these 70 priests were directing their king on what to do for this challenge that was laid out before them to prove, you understand, that their God is the real God of this earth. 12. And tomorrow when thou comest in, if thou findest not that Bel hath eaten up all, we will suffer death. Or else Daniel that speaketh falsely against us. And so this is just the priest essentially repeating what it was that the king had said to Daniel. So let him know if Bel don't eat up these goods, then you can put us to death. Or, or Daniel himself be put to death for speaking falsely against him. 13. And they little regarded it. And even with this threat with their lives being put on the line to prove that this god Bel isn't just simply a statue of clay and brass. It's like, so even with them knowing that they can't prove that this God is real, they didn't have no worries about the death threat that was put on their lives, on the lives of their families as well. For under the table they had made a privy entrance, whereby they entered in continually and consumed those things. Says underneath the table, they made a secret entrance where them and their families come in and do as they please. You understand? They could eat up all the food they wanted to. And since, these are heathens and hold nothing sacred, you understand? I'm sure they go in there and got what they ribs or their wives. And so I'm sure they were taking children in there and molesting them, because that's how heathens roll. And so that's exactly who Christian pastors got it from. That's exactly who these so-called leaders that we've looked up to for so long that have been busted for, like drug smuggling and molesting children and assaulting women. You understand? We get all of this from these heathen nations. We specifically our oppressor, at least in this captivity. 14. So when they were gone forth, the king set meats before Bel. Now Daniel had commanded his servants to bring ashes, and those they strewed throughout all the temple in the presence of the king alone. Then went they out and shut the door and sealed it with the king's signet, and so departed. And so, that's basically self-explanatory. I said Daniel had his servants go out, get some ashes, and they just laid it out all over the floor. Because of course we didn't have security systems or cameras back then to catch somebody in the act. People weren't allowed in religious temples unless they, of course, were authorized during a certain time or unless they held a certain rank. So the brother did something very simple, which was also extremely smart. He just simply laid ash out on the floor to, basically pick up footsteps, so they can see if somebody has been in there eating the goods, or if it really is, clay and brass that's devouring all this meat and eating this bread and drinking this wine. 15. Now in the night came the priests with their wives and children, as they were wont to do, and did eat and drink of all. Say, lo and behold, and so the truth gets revealed about Bel. You understand? It's simply just the priests and their families that are coming in and taking these goods for themselves. So ensuring that their households looks like their households are good, while somewhere else in this kingdom was most likely suffering. Because that's a hell of a lot of supplies that just be sacrificing to a statue every single day. And that's exactly how it is that Christian pastors operate within the ghettos and the barrios and reservations. You understand? We give them all these goods. You understand? We donate supplies. We give money, expecting for it to be for our people. Expecting for it to come back into the community and to repair what has been destroyed for so long, and what continues to be destroyed and to deteriorate. But at the end of the day, they're just taking all it is that they get and they're putting it towards their households. They're making sure that their families eat and they can buy what it is that they need to, even if it means the destruction of their brothers and sisters. You understand? That greediness, it's like that greediness it is that we get as a people. You understand? We get that from our oppressor. That's not, that's not the spirit of our people. 16. In the morning betime the king arose, and Daniel with him. 17. And the king said, Daniel, are the seals whole? And he said, Yea, O king, they be whole. So of course the seals aren't going to be broke, because these sly, disgusting priests made themselves a secret door or a secret route it is they could take in order to, fill their bellies and to stuff their pockets. 18. And as soon as he had opened the door, the king looked upon the table and cried with a loud voice, Great art thou, O Bel, and with thee is no deceit at all. 19. Then laughed Daniel and held the king that he should not go in, and said, it says the king was just focusing on I guess you could say the deed or the action it is that this so-called God had supposedly done. You understand? But yet Daniel, being the wise man that he was, and remembering that he had his servants lay out ash the night prior, stopped the king and told him to look a little, look a little deeper, look a little harder. And said, Behold, now the pavement, and mark, well, whose footsteps are these? 20. And the king said, I see the footsteps of men, women, and children. And then the king was angry. So just like any Christian gets angry when they find out, saying that the God it is that they've been serving for 20 to 50 years is truly a idol, a false God in this earth. You understand? Just like the king got angry, they get angry today. You understand? Because they try to look at the so-called works of the pastors, of their so-called leaders, when in reality, when you look closer at it, when you pay attention to it, and you know what's really going on, these so-called leaders have really been molesting children. They've really been pouring out sisters. They've really pushed onto us this false image of Christ and made it so that we worship different gods throughout the years. Whether you're celebrating Christmas, Thanksgiving, so on and so forth. That's why the UPK is just so unheard of. It's just so unique in this earth. Because nobody else is going to tell you how it is that all of these different gods it is that our people worship, no matter what way of life it is we claim to follow, whether it's following an Asian god, an East Indian, an African, or an oppressor god. We're the only ones that let you know every one of these gods, they are false. They're not real. They're not going to be able to truly do anything for you. They're simply just wood, stone, they're clay. They have no power in this earth. And naturally, it makes someone angry. But Lord willing, that anger will subside and they'll come after the truth. They'll seek to get into this school and you become a trooper. Become an officer. Sisters will learn how to be princesses and how it is that they should conduct themselves as a princess of Zion, and to stop following how it is that the gods of other nations have allowed for their women to conduct themselves. 21. And took the priests with their wives and children, who shewed him the privy doors where they came in, and consumed such things as were upon the tables. So then that naturally, the king forced for the priests and their families to show them how it is that they've been, pulling the sheet over his eyes this whole time. how it is they've been tricking him and deceiving him for so long, when this whole time he believed his God was real. So he truly believed that his statue was eating all that food. So just like Christians truly believe that, you understand, their God, that cross brings everybody together, and that it was an oppressor that died for everybody, when in reality it was a brother. It was a so-called black man who didn't even want unity amongst all people, who wanted separation. And who in himself was not an idol, who was a real man. "22. Therefore the king slew them and delivered Bel into Daniel's power." Because of the lies it is that this king was told, because how it is that he was deceived and lost all of these riches, he slayed the priests as well as their families. And you understand? And that's just the normal thinking that somebody should have. You understand? Like, for our people to be deceived for so long, and for when we find out of how it is that we've been lied to, how it is that Christian pastors and your Muslim imams have been stealing money from you, have been stealing money from, your mother and your grandmother, have been stealing money from your cousins and essentially everybody that you know. Like, our people should be outraged. We should be furious about the fact that we've been bamboozled for so long. That it is that we've been tricked to follow after a God who only really benefits one people. Because at the end of the day, a God of another nation is only going to benefit that nation. It's not going to benefit anybody else. That's why our oppressor ensured that he pushed Christianity or I can't even say it right, Catholicism, I believe that's right, on our people, when he first had us enslaved, because he knew that it'd benefit him more than it would us. And of course, there's always a well-trusted slave within the different religions who are put over the other slaves to ensure that they stay subservient and to ensure that they continue to worship those gods. And of course, that slave that was put over everybody else will always be above everyone else, financially at least. "And delivered Bel into Daniel's power, who destroyed him and his temple." Saying because of these lies, saying this once mighty God, who in itself was worshipped by the king, saying the most powerful man throughout this entire kingdom, and throughout a vast amount of land and territory, saying this mighty God was even destroyed as well as his temple. And that's exactly what's going to happen when our people wake up and realize not only who it is that we are as a nation, but it's also going to happen when we acknowledge, what it is that has been done to us for so long. Saying, like, when we acknowledge the lies it is that we've been told, and I mean, that's about it. You understand, those lies, like that is such a destructive tool that our oppressor used against us as a nation to tell us, all the lies of Christianity, all the lies of Islam. Okay. 23. "And in that same place there was a great dragon, which they of Babylon worshipped. And so now this is going into the second idol in Babylon. And so that the Most High power is going to inevitably destroy, so, which is another just statue made out of clay or metals. 24. And the king said unto Daniel, wilt thou also say that this is of brass? Lo, he liveth, he eateth and drinketh. Thou canst not say that he is no living God, therefore worship him. So, and naturally, because this God had such a vast amount of followers, which truly means nothing. You know what I'm saying? Because he also ate and drank. You understand? People believe that he was a living God, which that's something that we still mistake even till this day. And so we think just because a religion has a certain amount of followers, that's the that's the true. I guess the true teachings or the true religion it is that we should follow. So at the end of the day, I think it's the Catholic Church was the largest religion right now. You know, but at the same time, the Catholic Church has spent millions upon millions of dollars on covering up child molestation within their entire organization. And like, I mean, I don't know about you, but if there is a religious organization or any organization out there who claims to be for the people, who claims to be the way to salvation or the way out for our nation, but yet at the same time they have countless cases of pedophilia within. You know what I'm saying? When they have countless cases of priests spreading STDs to children, of priests having to be relocated to different countries because they've been molesting such a vast amount of children. Like, that's not something that I would follow. And that's not something that our people should follow, which is why we need to get up out of the Christian church. You know what I'm saying? Why it is we need to get out of, Islam or African spirituality or any other spiritual belief system that is out there that does not belong to our people. Because at the end of the day, I mean, really all of them have accounts of pedophilia within. You know, and the conscious community most certainly has countless cases of their top leaders, the top scholars within their organizations and the elders in their communities of being pedophiles, of molesting countless children who have came through their doors seeking to find an identity. The Christian church, I mean, forget about it. Like, our children can't even speak up against the pastors who violate them and take away their innocence without the person it is they're telling, beating them down and telling them that they better not ever say anything about that pastor. That pastor is a man of God who could never do any kind of harm. In Islam, forget about it. Like, them Muslims be marrying 9-year-old girls. They be having children with 11-year-old girls. Like, that's not something our people should be following. Like, that is the way of the heathens. That's what their statues allow for them to do. Their statues allow for them to sleep with children, allow for them to be homosexuals, allow for them to be drug dealers and drug addicts, and for women to be whores. You understand? That's all them. That's not our way of life. You understand? That's not what our power is about. That's why the Lord let us know off the jump. Saying that we are a holy people. Saying Deuteronomy 7:6, which the word holy means separate. Like we should not be following these heathens, these other nations. 25. Then said Daniel unto the king, I will worship the Lord my God, for he is the living God. So no matter how many followers it is that a religion has, saying, like, our people should still only follow the Most High power. Like it can be real tempting, saying, if your spirit is weak, to just give in to what it is that others want you to do. Like, I mean, you can ask any brother or sister in this organization, who found the truth and have fought to keep it, to stick with it, to stay within this school, and to follow the Most High God, to keep these laws, statutes, and commandments. You understand? We've had countless family members that have told us, you understand, that we should be leaving, you understand, this way of life, that we should, go back to how it is that we were, and how it is that we should follow the God of Christianity, or the God of Islam, or the, whatever God of Africans it is that our people choose to follow. Like, that can be truly something tempting if your spirit is weak, is to just drop your sword and to follow this God, because, I mean, he's got more followers. So he allows for you to do as you please. So you can look and see how it is that that God has made pastors and leaders rich, and it's tempting. But we should have the same spirit as Daniel and only worship our God. The Most High power of Israel. 26. But give me leave, O king, and I shall slay this dragon without sword or staff. The king said, I give thee leave. And Daniel let the king know he could slay without sword or staff, because, I mean, it is not something that's real. You understand? It's not going to magically transform out of the statue that it is into a walking, breathing, lizard or dragon. It's going to remain a statue. You could pelt it with an egg if you wanted to. It's not going to fight back. It's not going to eat that egg that you just hit it with. You can sacrifice in front of it, and it's not going to do nothing. You understand? You could blow it up, and there would be no repercussions, because it's simply fake. So you can do the same thing with that stone over there in the Middle East. And you can do as you please to it, and it's not going to all of a sudden sprout an arm and legs and chase you down. It's not going to smite you with whatever nonsense the Arabs be thinking about. It's simply just a stone. 26. Oh, it's like 27. Then Daniel took pitch and fat and hair, and did seethe them together. And so Daniel took pitch, fat, and hair, and he combined them together. So he rubbed them together and made lumps thereof. And by rubbing them together, it clumped up in the lumps. This he put in the dragon's mouth, and so the dragon burst in sunder. And Daniel said, Lo, these are the gods ye worship. And once Daniel put those clumps into the dragon's mouth, You understand? It exploded, and so he made a bomb of some sort. Lo, these are the gods you worship, and it's as simple as that. And so, like that cross or that image of Caesar Borgia, you know, saying the Mecca, like all these different uh, images or statues it is that we worship as a nation, they simply cannot defend themselves. You know, saying they need for people to defend them. So that Bell the Dragon wouldn't have collapsed if the king didn't allow for Daniel to do as he pleased to disprove this false god of the Babylonians. You understand? But the God of Israel, you're saying he don't need for people to defend him. There is no military, there is no philosophy. You know, saying there is no other God that can contend with him, that can destroy him or bring him down, because he's the only true power in this earth. But yeah, I guarantee you, if you go over there and take a sledgehammer to the Kaaba, you understand, out there in the Middle East, I mean, what's going to stop you? And saying if the people didn't stop you from doing so, I mean, it's just going to be a pile of rubble. It's just going to be broken up cinder blocks. That's all it is. And it's the same as, the cross and Christianity. It'll all just be broken up into splinters, and any statue that is erected to the God of Christianity, which is Caesar Borgia. And so you go over there in Brazil and knock down that big T-posing Caesar Borgia, or what the earth knows as Jesus Christ. And so you're not going to get struck down with lightning. You're not going to burst into flames or none of that. I'm saying it's just simply going to crumble. It's going to turn into rubble, into dust, and be swept away with the next rain that comes to that region. 28. When they of Babylon heard that they took great indignation and conspired against the king, saying, so the people were angry that the king allowed for their God it is that they loved so much. And saying the God that allowed for them to do as they please. And saying they were so angry that they were ready to, that they were ready to come up against the king, which happens in any empire if you take away a people's God. You understand? Like when a nation's God is at risk, that gives the people the spirit to fight and to revolt and to come against their ruler who is looking out for their well-being. And conspired against the king. And that's why it is the kings or the presidents of America, as well as North America and South America, why it is that they can't allow for their whole philosophy of Christianity or the whole philosophy of Catholicism to collapse. You understand? Because when the people no longer follow the religion that has kept them as slaves for so long, they're going to start to wake up. They're going to start to realize that we are oppressed in these lands, that we're oppressed by a specific group of people. And they'll start to realize that really all these nations round about us have been oppressing us and have sought to destroy us and to seek some kind of gain from us in order to bring themselves up above us. And when people wake up and do so, that's that's when a nation starts to get violent. You know what I'm saying? That's when buildings start to get burned down. That's when fights break out. That's when people decide to break away from another nation and to stick to their own. Saying, the king is become a Jew, and he hath destroyed Bel. He hath slain the dragon, and put the priest to death. 29. So they came to the king and said, deliver us Daniel, or else we will destroy thee and thine house. So the people gave the king an ultimatum. So it's either you give us this man who is toppling all of our idols, you know what I'm saying, who is taking away a God who accepts and promotes our lusts, or we kill you and your household. So which when the Christian church finally falls, or when Islam finally falls, and when all these different doctrines it is that we follow as a nation finally fall as a whole, and that's exactly how our people will be. You understand? Like, we'll come to the realization of who it is that our enemies really are. And that's when our people will want blood. But one thing we gotta recognize is that the Lord is going to take vengeance for all this deceit it is that we've experienced. You know what I'm saying? We don't need to go out and attack Christian pastors or attack the leaders of this nation, or the leaders, so-called leaders in our communities. Instead, the Lord is going to deliver judgment upon them for deceiving us for so long, for allowing for us to sacrifice all that we have onto these gods that only benefit a specific group of people. "30. Now when the king saw that they pressed him sore, it's like, being constrained, he delivered Daniel unto them. And naturally, the king gave up Daniel. Because at the end of the day, a heathen doesn't care about blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, no matter how much it is that we've profited their nation and their people. I mean, America is the perfect example of that. Like, we've been doing nothing but making sacrifices for America. You know what I'm saying? We have put in an absurd amount of wealth into this country. You know what I'm saying? We've built up their infrastructure. We've made it so that their economy is the way that it is. You know what I'm saying? We fought in their wars. We've became their police officers. We've been their doctors and their teachers. Like, we've done everything for this empire. But at the end of the day, America will sell us out if it means that they can still operate and run smoothly. You say just like you say just like they did during the goddamn civil rights movement. You say in cahoots with the so-called leaders within our communities. You understand? We were doing all that we could to help America. You understand? And they plummeted just a little bit. And during that time, I mean, America, like, it was really collapsing in on itself. You had devils murdering one another in the streets. You know what I'm saying? Kidnapping one another, beating one another to death. Women were being raped by the droves. You understand? Like, devils were becoming homeless. There was a lot going on for these devils, and it was a bad time for them. And so, but for us, it was a good time. But because we've had leaders who are so selfish and that only cared about themselves, and saying they threw us under the bus and allowed for America to destroy us and to put us in the condition it is that we're living in now, also they could come up. And naturally, America would not have any problem doing so. So they've been doing it for 400 years. Nothing's going to change. 31. Who cast him into the lion's den, where he was 6 days. 32. And in the den there were 7 lions, and they had given them every day 2 carcasses and 2 sheep, which then were not given to them, to the intent they might devour Daniel. And so the people, they were feeding these lions 2 carcasses and 2 sheep a day, and naturally, you understand, they end up just starving the lions so they could see a brother get torn to shreds, to see a brother devoured, and to go through absolute hell. 33. Now there was in Jewry a prophet called Habakkuk, who had made pottage and had broken bread in a bowl, and was going into the field for to bring it to the reapers. And so it was a brother, it's like who was making pottage, and he was going to bring it to those who were collecting crops in the fields. And so that's what a reaper is. They go out and collect what it was that's reached its peak in the field. So, and that also goes to show you about how it is that a priest and a prophet isn't solely served by the people. You know what I'm saying? A priest and a prophet are supposed to serve the people. And so are supposed to look out for them and ensure that they have what it is that they need. That's what the ISUPK has been doing since 1969. We make sure that Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians get any and everything it is that they need in order to survive and to function in this wicked kingdom. Meanwhile, the leaders it is our people look up to, I mean, like they simply just make sure that they're straight. You know what I'm saying? They make sure that them and theirs have what they need in order to survive and function, and that's it. And that's not the characteristics. It's like characteristics of a true leader. A true leader looks out for the people, guides the people. 34. But the angel of the Lord said unto Habakkuk, Go, carry the dinner that thou hast into Babylon unto Daniel, who is in the lion's den. 35. And Habakkuk said, Lord, I never saw Babylon, neither do I know where the den is. Oh, it's like so we're going to drop that there. This is the ISUPK security announcements. We are the ISUPK, start out 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brother and sister. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After the 6 month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. Book of Numbers, chapter 18, verse 21. Book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 8 to 10. Means tenth in the Hebrew. Mayashra. 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you, give the treasury department or teacher. Priest fund. The frugal offering for priests is not mandatory, and it's whatsoever amount you would like. Upcoming holy convocations is the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah, which is on November 28th, which is on a Sunday. It starts at 7 p.m., ends at 9 p.m. at 3532 North Keystone Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana. If anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, to start wearing all black boots, shirt, pants, headband, and a war scar. With that said, Admadium, which means to stand. Wapanya Haki Dum, which means to turn and face the east. We'll do the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew. Abanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kodash, Ayah, Shemka, Yahweh, Malakutka, Taba'ah, Ratazayaka, Hayah, Aisha, Ba'ar Ratazah, Hawa, Hayah, Bashamayim, Nathan, Lanaw, Lakam, Call, Yawam, Wasalakanawa, Kawawawahanawa, Hasalakanawa, Kawawawatayanawa, Wala'a, Dabayayanawa, Banasaya 1, Abal, Hawashayanawa, Mayun, Rai, Kaya, Bakur, Hubalakwa, Waha'ala, Wadaparth, La'awalamyam, Aman. The Lord's Prayer in English. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Yahweh, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. So be it. Prayer for the Hakat, or the power in the Hebrew. Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Babu Kusha. Another, it's like Nathan now. Hakat, La Raba'at, Ka Makala, Waka Marawa, Hakat, La Tahar, Hamatazarayim, Hakat, La Hakim, Hamathim, Hakat, Al Rakawat, Atamala, Lagarsham, Bahashem Yahushua, Waramat. Prayer for the power in English, Yahweh. In the name of Yahushua, please give us the power to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease, the power to cleanse the lepers, the power to raise the dead, the power against unclean spirits, to cast them out. In the name of Yahushua, thank you. So be it. Prayer for the blessings in the Hebrew. Barak atah Yahweh, wa Yahushua, wa Yaka'ala, wa Ha'ayim, Matazav Ya'ah, Alawak Yahana, Ha Alawapim, Ha Zaranyam, Ha Kwatazayanyam, Ha Kayayam, Waha Akwathian, Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua, the Water. Blessings in the English. Bless you, Yahweh, and Yahushua, and Michael, and the angels, commanding General Yohanan, the generals, the captains, the officers, the troopers, and the sisters, Yahweh, in the name of Yahushua. Thank you. So be it. Blessed are you, Yahweh, King of heaven and earth, and all things living. Yahweh, in the name of Yahushua, listen to us now. Right now, send evils and curses, and punishment and destruction to the heathens that speak against us, thy prophets, the teachers, the princes, the priests, the Israelite brothers, and the school. Send evils and curses, and punishment and destruction to the heathen, and shake loose the treasure of the rich of Israel that refuse to give to the school. Force their riches to enter into thy sanctuary. Send evils and curses, and punishment and destruction to the Edomites and the nations and their drug dealers, the court system, the prison system, Planned Parenthood, all the governments of our enemies, Amalek's synagogues and armies, Roman Catholic Church, the Pope, Islam, Christianity, Egyptology, militia, Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Nation, skinheads, Posse Comitazi, the gay movement, the lesbian movement, spies, workers of witchcraft, NASA space programs, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Wall Street. Open up the internet and the airways, the cable access channels, and the radio channels. Convict the spirit of any of thy people that seek to stop us, and bring swift destruction to all the heathen that stand in the way or try to stop us from broadcasting your words throughout the planet Earth. Let loose all the plagues, cause them to go to and fro through the earth and consume them. Let the plagues shake the house of the thief and the murderer. Let Yahushua, Michael, and Gabriel come down with the flying saucers and punish all the heathens that come up against us as we speak thy word. Cause it to be known by all that it is the angels that have done it. Cause it to be spread through the media, throughout the whole world. Cause them to shake at thy coming. In the name of Yahushua, thank you, always, so be it. Sar, which means to turn. Sisters Yeshabia, which means to be seated. Give a salute to the brothers, men of Israel. Amayim Shabbat, Amayim Barak, Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushua Barakatham. As a matah. Sisters Amayim, which means to stand. Sar, turn and face the sisters. Men of Israel, Amayim Sabbath, Amayim Barak, Yahweh Shema Al-Tam Ba'Hashem Yahushua. As matah. Class dismissed.